What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Weekend Roundup here on Touchline Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content I put out. Three things I'm going to cover, starting with the FA Cup and Liverpool's win over Arsenal. From the Liverpool side, you get a couple late goals to win the game and have obviously advanced in the FA Cup. Incredibly important to get this done without a replay, considering you've got Carabao Cup coming, European competitions are going to resume, you're still very much in the title race, and you lost Mo Salah for an undetermined amount of time to the African Cup of Nations. You have got to avoid playing as many extra games as possible. If you're going to continue to fight on all of these fronts, if you lose early in the FA Cup, then that's what it is, and you can at least move forward knowing that's not one of your focuses. But if you are Liverpool, you have to go try and win every competition you are still in. And they fielded a pretty good squad in this game, ultimately come away with the win, but doing so without having to play that second game, very, very important as they continue to maybe not be entirely convincing and definitely left some points on the table that may cost them a Premier League title with kind of the way the festive period went for them. But they are the team in all of the competitions. They are the team at the top of the Premier League table about halfway through the season. That's not what we were talking about 12 months ago. So, gonna have to see how the rest of this thing goes. But Liverpool, a big win as they continue to perform. On the Arsenal side, I'm not gonna really lump this in with the other poor performances in December that kind of had them fall away from Liverpool in that Premier League title race. The only thing I'm gonna say here is I am curious to see how this poor stretch of form impacts their winter transfer window. Because there is Ivan Toney sitting out there who may be the answer to a lot of Arsenal's problems simply because he's going to put the ball in the net consistently. And Gabriel Jesus has been battling these injuries. He's not a out and out goal scorer anyway. It's not like it's all falling apart. They just can't put the ball in the net. And it doesn't sound like Ivan Toney is going anywhere based on what Thomas Frank and Brentford are saying. But I got to imagine they're going to consider it if Arsenal just throw a ridiculous amount of money at him. And you just have to wonder if it might actually be worth it. As they're continuing to struggle here and just not getting things going the way they want. So that was kind of what I was thinking about in this game is, do they break the bank in a way that they weren't hoping to have to in this transfer window because they really think that might be the difference? Because there's an argument that it could be. Of course, there are no guarantees, and now they're out of the FA Cup as well. The second item here, very sad news. Sam Kerr, ACL injury, adding to the long list of female stars who have suffered ACL injuries in the last couple of years. And this comes obviously with Sam Kerr's contract winding down. And it comes right after her fiance Christian Pulisic moved from Gotham to West Ham, which made it abundantly clear that it seemed like the plan was for Sam Kerr to re-sign with Chelsea. That Sam Kerr wasn't going anywhere. Otherwise, why in the world is Christian Pulisic moving from the US to London if Sam Kerr's not going to be in London? That very well may still be the plan. I'm not suggesting that this injury is going to actually change anything. The point I want to make, though, is it at least creates some uncertainty. Because if you're Chelsea, do you have a little bit of hesitation now? Not about re-signing Sam Kerr, but about the money you're willing to invest in a third-year-old coming off of this injury? If you're Sam Kerr, does the rehab process make you reevaluate anything? The mental toll is something that we just can't appreciate unless you've gone through it. And so maybe something changes there. If West Ham get relegated, is Christian Pulisic sticking around to play in the second division of England? Now, of course, that is independent of the injury. But there are some questions now that didn't exist before this injury. Of course, the most important thing is wishing Sam Kerr all the best. Hopefully, she recovers quickly and is able to get back on the field as soon as possible and get back to being her brilliant self. But beyond that, I wanted to kind of look at what this might actually mean, and that's where my mind went, is you just can't guarantee anything, and injuries have more of an impact than just a player missing however many games. Like I said at the beginning, who knows if this changes anything? Maybe the plan still stays exactly the same, and Sam Kerr is 100% told that she wants to stay at Chelsea. But this creates another wrinkle and adds a complexity to a situation that didn't seem complex until this happened. Whether it actually gets complex or not, we're going to have to wait and see. But there is now some kind of uncertainty and some questions that Sam Kerr did not have to answer until this unfortunate injury. Third thing. I've talked about this before, but because Christian Pulisic had another really good performance, had a really good assist on a weekend where there wasn't all that much going on, I wanted to bring it up again. This idea that Landon Donovan was throwing out there that Christian Pulisic needed to come back to MLS to make sure he had playing time ahead of the World Cup, and that because he didn't have Chelsea go the way he wanted to, that maybe he couldn't cut it at the top level. All of that. And I said it when he signed at AC Milan. You can't just take Chelsea and apply it across the board to top European clubs. There aren't a lot of clubs who, number one, go through managers that quickly, where Pulisic, for most of his Chelsea career, didn't actually have the backing of the manager and didn't actually really get to work with most of the managers who were the ones that actually kind of brought him to the club and got him introduced to the club and were there to oversee the beginning part of getting him integrated. And there aren't a lot of clubs that will just go out in a summer transfer window and go buy a starting caliber player at your position just because they can and spend $1 billion over a couple transfer windows. The point I keep emphasizing, and I know I've said this before, there just aren't guaranteed starters except for 1, 2, 3 guys at clubs like Chelsea and Manchester City. Because they're always just going to find another guy to compete with you. And so if you're not the manager's favorite because the manager got changed and then you get injured, you're not walking back into that team. Look at all of these guys that Chelsea have bought that haven't exactly had a lot of success and haven't been able to integrate themselves well. It's not like this is specific to Pulisic. It's the challenge of being at that kind of club, and there are only a handful of them in the world. What he needed was to go to a club where he was going to be a consistent starter because they're not going and buying a bunch of additional pieces to compete with you every transfer window, and somewhere where he could get his confidence back. And obviously those two things are connected, and injuries are part of this as well. AC Milan was the perfect opportunity. They needed another creative force. He needed an opportunity where he could be free, express himself, not have to be looking over his shoulder all the time, and actually have a coach who's got some confidence and wanted him as part of the plan. The larger lesson to take away here, because I've said this stuff about Pulisic specifically before, is that you can't just go write a player off because one big move doesn't work. Of course, that doesn't guarantee that the second one is going to. And maybe sometimes players just aren't good enough to cut it at that top level. But thinking about this in terms of a guy like Timo Werner, who appears to be on his way to Tottenham. Timo Werner was brilliant that first go-round at Leipzig. And he hasn't been all that bad the second time either. Hasn't been great, but he scored some goals, specifically last season, when you look at his overall contributions across all competitions. It didn't work at Chelsea. Maybe it just doesn't work in the Premier League. Maybe it was specific to Chelsea. Who knows? But don't immediately write this off because and his potential at Chelsea because he didn't work, or sorry, his potential at Tottenham because he didn't work at Chelsea. It's not that simple of, oh, it didn't work here, so it's not going to work here. Pulisic is showing you how important confidence and fit and system and opportunity are. You just need to be in the right spot. And this is also why I'm not going to necessarily go criticize guys like Miles Robinson and Brandon Vasquez for choosing not to go to Europe. You just don't know that it's going to work out better. Maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong. I'm also not going to fault Pulisic for taking the opportunity to go to Chelsea when it was provided to him. It was a natural step for a guy who was playing at Borussia Dortmund in the Champions League as a teenager. Go give it a shot. And for a variety of factors, some of them in his control, many of them outside of his control, injuries, the coaching changes, the transfer windows, he just was never able to settle and never able to establish himself as a key part of that team. And that's fine. That one move doesn't define his career or mean that he can't play at a high level. And he's showing you that with what he's doing at AC Milan. Nobody should be surprised by this. It was the perfect fit. It was a home run. This makes all the sense in the world, both from AC Milan's perspective and from Christian Pulisic's perspective. He is this good of a player. He was this good of a player at Chelsea. You just didn't necessarily get to see it because there are a lot of other players at Chelsea with similar stories that are also really good, that were healthier, that were preferred by Frank Lampard or preferred by Graham Potter or all of the other managers that have come and gone. Sometimes it just doesn't work out the way you want. And that's okay. It's not some larger commentary on the player's abilities. You just got to find somewhere that works for you. Christian Pulisic has found that. He showed it again over the weekend. That is all for the weekend roundup. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you next time.